I would say take more time to connect with myself. I think I was busy just like running after things that are not even like aligned to who I truly am and what I truly want. It's like I was busy climbing a ladder, but the ladder was stacked against like a wrong wall. So and that was causing lots of anxiety and lots of unhappiness because I felt like I have like all this pressure to like achieve and be something for people that I didn't really care about. And then now I feel like I'm so much more at peace because I have the confidence now to live in my truth, and it's scary, and but I think that's what it takes in order for me to be able to live in my true authenticity and sovereignty.
Hi, my name is Yana. Thank you for watching. This episode starts with an audio introduction and continues with the video content. So remember to watch it until the end. And subscribe to this channel, leave a comment, share with friends. Thank you for being here and listening to Timeless Teachings. You are listening to Timeless Teachings, a global podcast with Yana Fry. We talk about consciousness, human potential, and mysticism in daily life. Is AI good or bad for humanity? What does it have to do with scaling deep human connection, advancing people, and elevating consciousness? I'm glad you asked. This episode is a very honest, vulnerable, and real heart-to-heart conversation with Indonesian-born founder of Warmspace, Edric Subur, who shares his very interesting life story of how he transformed from a self-centered corporate high achiever to a conscious entrepreneur on a mission to heal the world. Let's welcome Edric. Edric, it is so wonderful to have you with us here today on Timeless Teachings podcast.
So lovely to be here. Thank you for having me, Anna.
And I'm still having the goosebumps, and heart opening from your birthday celebration here in Singapore. It was just like such a meaningful community, conscious co-creation event. So thank you for doing it. It felt like you brought Bali and Burning Man, it was beautiful.
I'm so happy to hear that, especially from you, who also does so many beautiful gatherings around the world and retreat. But yeah, that was the intention. I think like the last 2 years, I've grown so much through like all this incredible places filled with like conscious people and experiences. So I really wanted to bring what I've learned and all these experiences I had to like introduce them to my people and my tribe in Singapore. And I think we did that over the weekend, and it was just so beautiful how it turned out.
It was an amazing experience. And I also get to learn a little bit more about your journey. And that's what I'm curious to talk today first. So people who are listening to us or watching it right now understand more where you're coming from, because I just think, your story is very interesting. So please tell us a little bit about Edric.
Yes, I'm happy to. So I'm from Indonesia originally, and then I moved to Singapore in 2011 for college. And then my career has always been in tech. So I've always been running like startup side projects, even during college time. And my first job was doing digital marketing for Twitter. And then I moved to Google, and then now I'm running my own startup. We're building Warmspace, and Yana is one of my investors. And what we're doing is we're creating this platform, a guided conversation app that allows anyone to experience deep human connection at scale. And I think we'll go into this story in the why a little bit, but the last couple of years, I had quite a big spiritual awakening and like getting into this path of like coming back to like who I really am and what is my mission, my purpose. And that had led me to work on Warmspace, and which is really tied to who I am, someone who loves bringing people together and allowing people to experience oneness and wholeness, aliveness, because I, for a long time, had been deprived of this, like what it means to be alive, like the true essence and what makes life worth living and what really fills people's heart is, I think, is everyone's like desire to be seen and to really connect from a place of authenticity and to have a community. So for a very long time, I never really prioritized any of this. I was a very ego-centered person. The typical, millennial that you saw was always chasing after success and then like realizing that that's not really what you want. And then like going on all this whole detour and like figuring out what is it that you really want? What is it that really fills my heart? So that led me to found Warmspace. 2 years ago, I also left Singapore to move to Bali, lived there 4 years, started my digital nomad life. And this year I spent some time in South America. I was living in Peru and Colombia. And then I came back to Singapore recently, unplanned, for a couple of weeks before moving to my next chapter to Europe. So that's a little bit about me.
There's a lot about you, and I want to unpack it a little bit more because you just shared a lot of really interesting things. So let's start with how was it growing up as you? What was your experience of your childhood upbringing?
It's so interesting because when I look at my peers today, people who went to the same high school as I did, they all kind of are back home. Some of them like did study overseas, just like I did, and then the US and UK and all that. Most of them, I would say, would have come home by now and like started a family, continued family business. So I grew up in a very conventional kind of environment. I'm Chinese Indonesian, so a part of the culture is like, I think most of us were very fortunate to kind of have like our family business to run, and there's this expectation to be an entrepreneur, because in Indonesia, like unlike Singapore, when you go on the corporate route, like it's you won't have a good life. The salary is really low, living conditions aren't great, so it's expected of you to eventually start your own business, and have a family and have kids and get married. So it's very interesting when I look at my peers and where I am right now. Like our life paths our lifestyle is so different. And so I think in growing up, I was a pretty shy kid, like very insecure. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about my kind of upbringing, my relationship with my family, but because of the trauma and all of that, like that I had in the family, I had a really low self-esteem, and that's why I tried to compensate that by kind of overachieving, trying to be different. So that was like me, like starting to kind of figure out, find myself during high school. Like in Indonesia, it's a tight like group culture, so you're always part of like a group. So it's really hard for me to kind of figure out who I am, and I had like this like people pleasing kind of tendency, again because of the trauma of like trying to kind of gain significance and like trying to feel good about myself. So I ended up becoming like a clown in the class, and so it was all of that. But I think the environment was like very traditional. It's a very homogeneous kind of society as well. So you're either Indonesian or Chinese Indonesian. So like coming to Singapore was very eye-opening for me, actually, being in a very more international environment. And then even like with religion, like realizing it's actually okay to not have religion. Like when I first found out that people here, when they say agnostic, I was like, wow, is that possible? Because in Indonesia, the perception is when you don't have a religion, like you're considered as a really bad person, outcast from the society. So yeah, like my mind was really open when I first left Indonesia, just to show to give you a sense of how kind of conventional and close up my kind of culture was in my upbringing.
Wow, I absolutely love your brutal honesty about your self-awareness. This is like, you just say this, it is. And it's very, very inspiring, and it like really opens up the heart even more just listening to you, because I could see that on your journeys, you have done a lot of inner work already just to understand all of those things. And that's, I mean, kudos to you. That's great. And I think we all can relate to childhood trauma. I mean, we all had it one way or another, regardless which place of the earth, each person is born and whatever family circumstances. I mean, you can't escape your parents, and with love and not love right around it. So whatever is happening is happening. And what was it? It was a hilarious. There's a magazine, I think it's called Granta, if I'm not mistaken. I saw it somewhere from my friends, and they had this really funny issue with the title, "Families, they fuck you up. You can't live with them and you can't live without them." I just found it so funny.
That's so true. Yeah, what was it saying? If you think you're enlightened, spend like 2 weeks with your family.
Exactly, like after all the monasteries and sadhanas and silent meditations, try to go live, with the family again, and check how good you are actually about your practice. So this is
so true.
Now about your journey. And then you went to work in all these techno companies, basically, right? Like different technology companies. And you mentioned that you had an experience of like awakening, or like whatever words we're going to use for them. So can you tell a bit more, like what does it mean for you? What the experience was actually about?
Yeah, I think for me, awakening is just waking up to my truth and the truth about life and the world. And I felt like growing up, I had this kind of template that I followed, which was, like the typical kind of society recipe for what it means to, or how to live your life, which was go to a good school, get a good job, get kids, get a family, and then make a lot of money, and supposed to lead to happiness. And then just realizing that that's not true at all. There's no one path that you should be following in life. Like everyone should kind of chart their own course and their own path in the way that feels authentic to them, and like what it means. Like, and then I learned that for me, at least, what brings me the most joy and fulfillment is connection, love, community, working on something that is actually giving back and like truly being in a service in a way that is making real change in people's lives. And how I came about to learn about this was kind of like organic. I've always been into like self-development, but for the kind of toxic reason. Again, it was like due to my low self-esteem, and then I felt like I had to work extra hard. And because in my university, I was kind of lonely. I didn't have, and I came from, like I mentioned, in Indonesia, there's a big group culture, was always part of a big group. And then coming to Singapore, couldn't really find like a group or the people that I kind of like could click with. And then I ended up being alone. I actually had a lot of friends, but I didn't feel like I was close to any one of them, which I think is kind of the is like what most people in this generation are experiencing with like social media and everything. You have like thousands of followers, but when people ask you who are your close friends, like you can probably only like 0.1 or 2 or even none. I think the statistics is like the number of close friends in the US have been decreasing over time to like on average like 1 to or no close friend at all. And so because of that, and I was running my startup at the same time, so I had like a really like rough time, and I went through lots of kind of challenges and inner turmoil. So I ended up leaning to like books and like seminars. So that kind of started off my self-development journey. And then when I went to Google, someone was selling a ticket to Tony Robbins seminar, and then I have heard of this guy.
Tony Robbins,
yeah. Yeah, like, and I've heard of this guy, but I haven't really read his books, and then something was just calling me, and then I was like, okay, I'll get your ticket. I went there, and then was just really blown away by Tony Robbins, how he is, and I was like, yeah, and then I got fully upsold. I bought like all of his package. I spent like thousands of dollars for like all of his programs, and then I remember the most life-changing one was like Date with Destiny in Australia. And that was so different from the rest of the self-development seminars I've been to, because that was like kind of an opening for me to really dive deep into myself. Like, I think all the other seminars I've been to, they're very like external driven, you know, how to be successful, how to be liked by others and all of that. But in this program, I got to go in and explore my values and what happened in my past and my childhood that kind of determine who I am today and my relationship with my parents. And yeah, it opened up so much in me. And that was, I think, the beginning of like my kind of awakening. And I remember after that, I went home to have a one-on-one conversation with my dad. And my dad was like, and then when my dad, he goes to my mom and goes, "Are you not coming to dinner with us? Edric just asked me to have a one-on-one dinner with me. That is like really weird. Like, we don't do this kind of thing in our family." But yeah, like this, like I became really intentional in the way I want to shape my relationships with the people around me, with my dad, with my mom. And I just told my dad about like my whole trauma, you know, like how I grew up hating him and like how I didn't see his side of the story, because my mom and dad used to fight a lot and all that. And then after kind of Tony Robbins, I met actually a really close friend of mine now who brought me to Burning Man the year later. And that was like, whoa, that was like a huge gateway into spirituality and like this, like it gave me a preview of a way of living that was so different from how I was used to my whole life, like how you could actually not always have to put yourself above everyone else, which was what I was doing for a long time because I couldn't trust anyone. I always put myself first. Felt I had to always care for myself first and prioritize my needs. And at Burning Man, you're in this kind of environment where there's just this trust that everyone kind of got your back. Everyone is constantly gifting and caring for each other. And I was like, wow. And I think for the first time, I really opened up and like allowed myself to be vulnerable and allow myself to be taken care of. And the freedom that I felt from being able to express myself and like put on all these like funny costumes and then just really unlearning toxic masculinity over there as well, like seeing all this men like wearing like tutus and like makeup and like still very like so secure in who they are. And yeah, there's still a lot like over there that I feel like really changed, like it shifted my core belief about myself and the world. And then a month later, I had to go to LA for a company offsite with Google. And then I was being interviewed to like share my life story. And I kind of came out being bisexual on the stage as well, because I was like carrying the Burning Man energy. I was like, I don't care what people think about me anymore. I just want to be like my whole fullest authentic self, like whoever, with anyone at any time, including at work. So it was like, yeah, it was just like a big kind of I felt like I was kind of
it in Google. Yes, that would have been an interesting coming out moment.
Yeah, like I had to be dramatic, you know, like have a really big coming out moment in front of 300 people in a ballroom. Yeah, and then that's how I kind of got into spirituality as well. I became very open-minded, and then the more I get into spirituality, the more I realize so many things that I've been taught about the world doesn't have to be the way it is, because, you know, you've been to Bali and you're surrounded by all these people who have kind of left the matrix and kind of like tried out all these things that are so unconventional, like tantra and like the way we relate to one another and like the lifestyle, you know, like not having to do 9 to 5. And everyone there was like taking ownership and like really deciding and shaping the life that they want for themselves, which I think was kind of, it's a lot of people don't really think about that it was even possible, because it was so easy to feel like this is life, like this is the box that we live in, and we just kind of have to operate around this box, you know, like I'm not seeing what's possible outside of it. So yeah, I think that's just kind of like a little bit of like the journey of like how my kind of awakening kind of started and what kind of had led me to till today.
And then what led you to starting Warmspace? What was the hot fire, right, that led you to
Yeah. So I think the spark first kind of started at Burning Man, or now that I look back, I think it did happen at Burning Man, because I was just so inspired by the authentic human connection that I experienced there, where people just didn't put on any mask and being able to be their fullest, most colorful self, and then connecting from that place, and how like beautiful and like fulfilling it was to be in that space. And then I remember when I came back to Singapore, I started to look at my relationships very intentionally. Like, again, I still had lots of friends in Singapore. And then like I started to think like, oh, but if I were to like be stuck in a traffic with every single one of them for like 3 hours, will we have really like heart expanding, heart to heart kind of connection? And the answer was no to a lot of them. So I started to really, I created a friendship list. like like I listed down on like Excel spreadsheet, like, okay, these are the people that I really want to intentionally and consciously build a relationship with, because how they make me feel and how they care for me and I care for them. And yeah, I just like started to be very interested in the whole human connection space. I started to explore all these like board games and like conversation cards, and I was organizing dinners, inviting my male colleagues to my place, and then like really have like a heart-to-heart conversation, which was very weird at that time with the dynamic that we had, because we never really talked about feelings, and just like how most men do. And then I got kind of invited to join a men's circle afterwards, where we gather every Thursday morning with like 12, like 15 men, and just like really open our hearts to each other. So I think things were just really falling into places after I came back from Burning Man. And then COVID happened, and I just had this idea to, because of how we're so, I don't know where you were back then, but like in Singapore, the condition was quite bad, where we're not allowed to meet anyone. And so people were very deprived of connection. So I was thinking as something that I can give to my friends, I wanted to put together all of these things I've learned about connection and facilitation into a 1 hour Zoom call, and get all my friends to like connect with someone new one-on-one and have me facilitate the conversation over Zoom. So that was like an experiment. Like, can I allow people to experience deep connection within an hour with all the different techniques that I've learned? And I was just really touched by what I saw. People were crying, and I see like this heavy, like things on their shoulders that got like really released, and they felt like they softened up, and I just felt like they came reconnected with their humanity. And that was just so beautiful, and I was really moved by what I saw, and it was, my heart felt so full like doing that. And then, you know, coming from tech and having run multiple startups, I then think about like, how can I scale this without having me
of course,
in every Zoom call.
The entrepreneurial you, of course.
yes. So I thought about kind of productizing and digitizing the experience, and then got the team together, and like and then the prototype kind of worked really well as well, with the recording of my voice initially, and like really clunky UI user interface on the web, and it worked. And then since then, with like, I think the original intention is to create a space for people to be able to have really deep connection, deep conversation. And then, but the more we explored and dive deep into the space, the more we realized we're actually touching on something bigger than we thought, which was the connection crisis that we're seeing in the world today, and realizing how people are so lonely and disconnected from themselves and the world, and the kind of social media addiction, and also like the big problems we're seeing in the world today, from like discrimination, like war, to like even climate change. I learned through my time at Warmspace, like if you really boil down to the root cause, it's really because of disconnection. Like people were not connected to themselves, and they're not allowing themselves to be with their pain and trauma, and allow themselves to heal. And that's why they're not able to empathize and relate with the suffering of others. And, you know, when you have experienced so much violence and discrimination in your life, if you're not taking the time to really heal the pain, you tend to kind of perpetuate that to avoid the pain as well. So that's what's causing so much like hatred and separation, because we're not connected to our own selves and our own pain and our values, and that prevents us from being able from caring about others and the world. So now we went from like a platform that just facilitates good conversations to really this bigger mission of really wanting to heal the world. And healing the world starts from healing ourselves. And that's what really Warmspace is set out to do. Through this genuine connection with someone else, you allow yourself to just be real and not run away from all this pain and problems, and experiencing oneness, and how through that you experience wholeness and aliveness and feel human and to feel human again, and to really flourish and hope. And we hope that you can take that with the taste of this experience, you can go out to the real world and expand this sense of connections with the people around you, and create this ripple effect of compassion and kindness in the world.
I could listen to you, for hours and hours and hours. You're really, really very eloquent at how you're expressing your heart. It's actually very beautiful to witness. When we talk about spirituality and just technology and apps, maybe even metaverse, like just my question, to you about that, because I can see like how people like talking about wellness and metaverse, or wellness and technology, right? Let's bring it all together. And there are sort of pros and cons. Some people say it's fosters human connection, the technology. Others say it separates us more because we are not physically present. So how do you feel about it?
I think a lot of the concerns are very valid, looking at how much problem and like suffering that technology has caused in the world today. Like people getting addicted to their phones, and they end up getting depressed and anxious, feeling they're not good enough. That's like, I think, what the social media has done to the younger generation these days. But at the same time, I'm a tech optimist, and I think these are the yeah, and I think we need to really be aware of the risk and the concerns. They are really valid, but at the same time, to not dismiss the true potential of technology to also create healing and create more equal access to opportunities and abundance in the world. I was just talking to my friend about this metaphor where, like, if you have this huge blank canvas that represents all the light and goodness in yourself, and then suddenly you put a black dot in the middle, and all your focus goes into the black dot, like, which is the problem and all the bad stuff, and then you kind of forgot about it, all the goodness that could happen in your life. So I think it's the same with technology, and I think tech is just like a tool, essentially, and I think is the intention. I think there are two things. Like, one is we can be very intentional in how we use the tech, but at the same time, I want to acknowledge that, like, we as humans are very vulnerable to manipulation and to influence. So it's hard for us to exert like self-control, like to not use our phone too much, like to use tech consciously. So I think there needs to be a movement and a shift in the paradigm of how we technologists like design products, where we take full responsibility of like how our product could influence the behaviors of the users. And I think if done really well, if we optimize not just for growth and like revenue and profit, but also optimizing for user well-being and like self-development and helping them evolve as like as a species and as a humanity, I think tech has such a huge potential to do that. Some examples, like how people experience like huge transformations at like Burning Man, all these retreats and Vipassana, but not everyone has that opportunity and resources to do that. But with meditation apps and with all this devices that can measure your brain wave and then optimize your inner state so that you could get a taste, or at least of what that enlightenment is like, or connect with nature through VR. This creates like equal, or it creates access to people in a way that was never possible before. So to me, tech can accelerate the evolution of consciousness in the way that would take such a long time for the whole kind of society to get there. And tech has that potential to do that. Like also it provides customization and personalization where, you know, when you do ayahuasca and you do all the psychedelics, and like most people have different reaction to it, and sometimes it can cause like more trauma than like heal the trauma. But like with tech, you know, like
the conversation, exactly how
exactly
if you do it in the proper way. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. And now there's a huge movement in the psychedelics slash tech kind of intersection and area. And I know there's this platform that provides psychiatrists measurement tools and personalization framework and features so that they could provide like treatment with psychedelics in a way that really suits the person's lifestyle and who they are and all of that. So yeah, just to give you an example of like how there are things that can be made more possible and more profound and more safe even because of the assistance of tech. Another example, it's also a shameless plug, is like how Warmspace is allowing people to experience deep human connection on demand. You know, like you could have conversations with people in your life at any time. It's really hard for people to break into the depth that they seek because that was me like a few years ago before all this like awakening. I felt like all my conversation with my friends were about like shows and movies and politics, you know, and like once you're like in that pattern, it's really hard to break out of it. It felt like awkward. Like, how do I approach my friend and start talking about our values and our trauma? You know, it's like, but like with Warmspace, like that, the whole kind of process to get there was kind of automated. You know, you hear the voice of the coach we work with to kind of guide you. So there's this third person, and then there's music playing in the background. There's guided meditation. So everything is kind of set up and optimized so you get into that heart space much more easily. And you could do this on demand. You can like get to the platform and schedule a time, get connected with someone across the world, which would have been much more difficult to access this kind of level of depth in your day-to-day life without the assistance of technology. So yeah, just kind of some positive examples of how tech can be an assistance and an aid and our friend if it's designed and optimized and built with the intention to help and to support the flourishing of humanity.
Basically, what you're saying that we need to have more conscious coders, you know, so we need to bring all those elements of wellness, well-being, and Burning Man and Bali kind of tools into all IT companies for all people who are developing anything related to technology. So we're going to have like a conscious Alexa, or you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Conscious Google. And
exactly.
That's actually would be really interesting. And, you know, in general, I find it a fascinating conversation about consciousness and technology and like how far we can go with that. And of course, we are just at the very beginning of this journey. I think in our generation, we're going to see a lot how it develops, because even internet was just 50 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Right. Mm-hmm. So maybe even less. I mean, technically popularized. And I mean, look how much further we all went collectively around the world with this. So now all these conversations around consciousness and technology, like I know if people ask like a more traditional teachers or gurus who are like older, right, from generational point of view, then of course, like Sadhguru, you know, all kind of, you know, that type of teachers. It was, of course, they would always say that you cannot bring consciousness to technology. It is absolutely not possible, right? And like you can't have an enlightened AI, which there is truth to that to some extent, of course. I mean, if you study consciousness as itself, on the other hand, everything is half truth. And there is an element of consciousness you can bring, and you can definitely, at least in the practical way, it's possible to create it just the way how you were describing, when it is just much more life supportive for humans. I mean, that we can definitely do. And I feel, if technology that we create, including the Warmspace, if people who are behind it, who are creating it, who are the founders of that and the core team, just have this intention just the way you have, and I know people around you because I know your founding team, right? And so if people just have who done enough inner work and just understand better where we're heading collectively, I think it would be amazing future we can create. And I'm still waiting for a new social media app that kind of, takes over Facebook and Instagram and shows us something differently. Seriously.
Yeah.
I don't know in what way it's even possible to do it, but I am waiting for one.
Yeah. There's a few things, really important points that you commented that I kind of wanted to add on. Like one, I think is I think the most popular impression or perception of technology in the spiritual community is that how it is actually disconnecting humans from each other, and like how tech is like the enemy, and like people, we should like stay away from tech and all of that, I think. But I think like one, I feel like it's just impossible to like get away from tech. It's just like part of us today. Like if you want to stay away or like disconnect or like separate from tech, you're just kind of like living in this, you're behind essentially, And I think when you're behind, like, especially if you're here to create impact and connect and relate with others, like it'll be really hard. Like you stop, essentially you're rejecting the present moment, the present time, because this is the reality that it is now. And then I think second is like, we as humans have to evolve with what's here with us today. Just like how I think the principles of religions are very outdated, and with our new understanding of ethics and how we relate and how we treat each other, like some of the old principles and code of conduct should be changed and upgraded as well. And I think that's the same with tech and spirituality, where people, instead of kind of pushing tech away, we should embrace tech. And how can we insert more? Because like it or not, tech will be, the new generation will embrace tech. It will be part of their lives since like the beginning of their lifetime. Instead of like pushing away, we should, as the spirit people in the spiritual community, should like insert themselves in tech and start spreading their messages and teaching in tech, so that there's more of this kind of content that is actually helping and supporting them and educating them to overpower the content that is actually toxic for this being. So I think I just want to comment like how we should embrace tech and like whatever that is with us in this moment as the tools that allow us to be more relevant and present and to spread our gifts in this world. And I think the second thing that you mentioned was like how about the conscious coders. And joke aside, I think what we should aim to be doing moving forward with all the tech founders and anyone actually who is working on anything meaningful in the world, like before you go and create any products or projects that you want to put out in the world, you should first like work on yourself, because I believe whatever values that you currently hold will be carried with the product that you are creating in the world. So like if you haven't healed yourself, if you don't have this self-awareness about who you are, then it's going to translate in your product. And we don't want to have like another product or companies that like exploit the planet and the society because they haven't really understood what it means as the founders for them. And so I think that is like the number one step before anyone becomes a founder or becomes anything that is actually creating impact, or when you have influence in the world, I think everyone should start looking inward, do lots of inner work, like clear and heal as much as possible. And then you have like this pure, beautiful like transmission that you can have into your product that will spread kindness, goodness, and positivity that create real meaningful impact that brings a lot of good for the world.
Yes, I feel if it were up to me, I mean, I would include in the all school programs and all country university programs, I don't know, presidential candidates preparation programs, like everything, any kind of meaningful position when you have to make decisions that affect other people, or when you're in a position that you employ people so that or influence any other way. I feel everyone needs to be trained in a certain way so they have enough courage and tools to actually face themselves and address all those inner world issues that every human being carries. And I feel that's actually fundamentally which really upgrade humanity, because then at what you said, we can create beautiful things, and what you guys are doing now. And I just feel, we live in such extraordinary times, and people can argue, okay, it's like Kali Yuga, it's dark and we are suffering. I'm like, well, yes, to some extent, of course. I mean, of course, we are on global scale. There are with wars and everything else that's going on, and, vaccinations and everything else. Right? So that's, but at the same time, it's like a bit to your analogy, the white canvas and the black dots. So those are the black dots, but then there's beautiful white canvas around it. And there are so many amazing things that people are doing. And I feel especially people who are right now, like you in 20s, because that's the kind of the generation that already seen all the bad stuff, and how bad it could be. And also kind of realize that, you can't really afford any longer, like to dump the planet and to make money in an ethical way and, to use, child labor and to do all those kind of things, because it's not sustainable. And eventually, it will all destroy itself if we continue this way as humans. So I'm just very happy to see like people who do things like you do. And I just wish there will be more. But then also the interesting part is that's why we are having conversation like this one, to make it normal and to make it okay. And it's a bit like in the last 2-3 years became this huge boom about talking about mental health, and to make it okay to talk about mental health. And I think particularly in Asia, maybe like the Western part of the world were okay with that earlier, but especially in a more traditional society like Asia, they just start catching up. So it's actually okay to have those thoughts and feelings and conversations. And that made a huge difference. And now, so I feel it's just important to have these kind of conversations when we say, do you want to start a business? Do inner work first, and heal yourself, and then open a company. And the more people like you who actually share stories so openly and bravely, how you did here today, to make it okay to talk about it again, and just to be one of those examples. That's how we inspire others. So Edric, just thank you, for being who you are and for being just so open about it. And so, you illuminate so much light within you. And it's just really beautiful to see. I'm super excited for the Warmspace to see where it's heading with everything. And of course, guys, we're going to include all the links in the description. So either check the YouTube video if you're watching, or check the podcast description if you're listening, for all the links how to find with Edric and connect with the experience. And I'm just looking also the timing and mining the real and TikTok culture we are living in. So now let us move into the final question for today, okay?
Okay.
And my final question for you would be, if you were to look at your younger self, I mean, you are still very young, but even a younger self, that part of you that was still struggling, that maybe was confused and afraid, didn't really know what to do, right? So if you would look at that part, what would you say to yourself right now?
I would say take more time to connect with myself. I think I was busy just like running after things that are not even like aligned to who I truly am and what I truly want. It's like I was busy climbing a ladder, but the ladder was stacked against like a wrong wall. So, and that was causing lots of anxiety and lots of unhappiness because I felt like I have like all this pressure to like achieve and be something for people that I didn't really care about. And then now I feel like I'm so much more at peace because I have the confidence now to live in my truth, and it's scary, and but I think that's what it takes in order for me to be able to live in my true authenticity and sovereignty. So I would tell my younger self to take the time to figure out who I really am and not to worry too much about the external achievements and like milestones and those that all can wait. I need to first figure out who I am and also be kind to myself, and that because that takes time. It's a whole journey. I'm still kind of figuring out who I am, and to kind of trust more, to trust the universe, to trust people, to trust that I've got community, I got people who got my back, because otherwise I think, yeah, I was just a really kind of untrusting and anxious and worrying person, and that just led me to nothing good in my life. And just knowing that I can count on people and I can trust myself and trust the world, it's just a much more peaceful and nicer place to be in. Like just knowing that I got this, and there's so much more the world that has to offer, and this is not it. And there's just, I'm like probably at the tip of the iceberg still, even after seeing what I've seen, experiencing what I've experienced in terms of what the world has to offer. And that just, every time I think of that, it just fills me with so much wonder and joy, because life is beautiful and I'm here to receive, I'm here to see and experience. And if I have that in mind all the time, life will be good, because there's just so much more to life beyond the little worries that I have, that it feels really small in comparison when I can have that perspective.
Thank you so much, Edric. Thank you for joining us today on Timeless Teachings podcast. And guys, remember to follow us and subscribe on the podcast and Instagram at The Timeless Teachings. And see you next week.
A gentle reminder that this is not a regular podcast, because here we have no rules and no scripted questions. All conversations are spontaneous, unfiltered, and real, with people from all over the world, regardless of their race, religion, nationality, skin color, language, or social circumstances. The intention for this podcast is to showcase the infinite variety of how human beings think and what they do to create happiness, fulfillment, self-realization, health, wealth, legacy, and overall, a truly spectacular life. Did you enjoy the interview? Feel free to share this episode with friends, subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And remember, you are the master of your own life.